welcome to when we're going to talk about wind and where the wind comes from. Last time we talked about wind and the units of the wind and how much it was. So like 10 knots is 5 meters per second, and 5 is 10 meters per second or 20 knots. So you have to specify the unit when you talk to someone, and that's also the same thing with forecasts. If you look at the forecast and it says 30, well, don't get too scared before you actually see the unit. If it's kilometer per hour, then it's not that much. Then it's like 18 knots, 9 meters per second, which is fine. So really try to specify the unit before. The forecast says also if it's like a northerly wind or a southerly wind or westerly, or might have an arrow to showing where the wind comes from. And the wind is, when you say northerly wind, it comes from north, so it goes from north to south, and southerly wind, the opposite of course, goes from south to north, which is not the same with current. If it's like water current, if it's a northerly current, it goes to north, so it's the opposite from the wind. When we're sailing dinghy and just sailing around, or like on our courses, we're going sailing around on a racetrack or course, or just having fun sailing around an island, it doesn't matter really if it's northerly wind or southerly wind, because we're going to sail in everything. But of course, if you're going to from west to east, and they say it's an easterly wind, then you will going to face the wind, and then you have to struggle going up the wind, which is really nice, but still you have to know that, okay, I'm going up the wind. Or the opposite, if you're going from west to east and it's a westerly wind, you will have the wind from your back. When we sail, we are actually much more local than that. When we are sailing, we are actually more local than the forecasts actually. So when we are sailing, it's more of interest to knowing where the wind comes from in exactly this moment and exactly the angle to the boat, and so we can define how we will sheet our sails. And there's different ways to figure out how the wind comes from when we're sailing. The best thing is like a wind indicator that we have top on the mast. And it's a Swedish patent called Windex, that pretty much like 9 out of 10 boats using this Windex. It's a wind indicator with an arrow pointing towards where the wind comes from, and it also have two small legs sticking out that we will talk about later. So that's a Windex, the wind indicator. There's also of course flags or small flags or any flags on boats or on shore that we can have a look at and determine, okay, how the wind will be there. It doesn't have to be the same, of course. We can also use ourselves. It's quite easy to like look to the wind, and you will actually feel the wind in your ears, and then you can determine quite exact how where the wind comes from at that moment. So there's different methods. These wind indicators that we usually have on bigger boats, we can also have them on smaller boats, then perhaps in the front of the mast. They are very, very useful. When you have sailed for some time, you can also see how the sail behaves itself, and then you can understand quite much how the wind will come, how the wind comes on the sail, and then you know where it comes from. But there's always good to have some kind of wind indicator, or several. And remember, the forecast says, okay, if it's a northerly, southerly wind, then pretty much how much it is, and you need to know the units.